both Sadhguru and the US Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, amongst us. It's a pleasure for us to invite, on behalf of Sadhguru Center for a Conscious Planet, which is the host center, and we explore the intersection of science and spirituality to enhance our understanding of consciousness, cognition, and compassion. I am just so gifted because I get the best of both worlds, combine my passion as well as profession to explore these intersections. Inspired by the science and spirituality talk that was held at Sanders Theater in 2018 between Sadhguru and a couple of neuroscientists, Emery Brown and also Nicholas Skiff, which has more than 10 million YouTube views, we thought we should really do the next step, that is to establish such a center at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So with the generosity of Dr. K. Yamazaki, who's amongst us, we were able to establish this center, and also with blessings from Sadhguru, to explore this intersection between science and spirituality. Next, we started doing patient programs that very much aligns with the US Surgeon General's office that talks about doing programs for patients with long COVID, patients with frailty, patients with cancer. We were able to do some of these cancer programs with Mr. Luis Corona's philanthropy as well. We want to acknowledge that. And also take care of cancer patients. In addition to that, we take care of healthcare workers in community centers, such as the Bodon Healthcare Center. I think that also aligns with the Surgeon General's mission. So we are very grateful for these opportunities. We went on establishing with an internship program, 3C's research app, and also an in-person clinic as an alternative path for us, an adjunct for patients who have several neurodegenerative diseases. We went on with Parkinson's disease, and our main job is to do research, to look at the footprints of consciousness, etc. So we also did a Harvard Consciousness Conference, which was well attended by over about 500 people, and all the content that were generated there actually have more than 2 to 3 million YouTube views. We looked at consciousness from multidisciplinary perspective, from a physics point of view, from a mathematics point of view, from the neurology point of view, etc. So it was very immersive experience of consciousness itself. And Dr. Emron Meyer's talk on gut microbiome, he's amongst us today, was also well received with almost 1 million YouTube views there. So next, our main job is to do research. So we went on to do research, and that is showing that some of these practices that has got a width and the breadth of inner engineering practices, they actually do make you more resilient and also make you more happy, joyful, and then you approach everything else from there. That also next moved on to improved cognition in people who do these practices, and all these are PubMed published research. And we also showed that doing these inner engineering practices and any other similar practices could definitely decrease your inflammation. And on top of that, we looked at mechanistic approaches such as molecules that are responsible for these, potentially looking at brain-derived neurotrophic factor, endocannabinoids, proteomics, and other type of work. What is relevant today is some of this work that is being peer-reviewed. We were able to show in our research that there is enhanced relationship quality, as you can see in this particular slide, enhanced parent-child connections. I'm sure the speakers are going to touch on this and also delve deep into it, that can actually overcome some of these questions that we're talking about today. With that, this is a great time, and we're so inspired and excited to introduce Vice Admiral Dr. Vivek H. Murthy, MD, MBA, amongst us. Dr. Murthy was confirmed by the US Senate in March 2021 as the 21st Surgeon General of the United States. And Dr. Murthy helps to advance the health and well-being of all Americans, and they also address critical public health issues. Their offices recently issued an advisory on the youth mental health crisis, and also the role the media plays, social media plays on the youth mental health crisis, the epidemic of isolation, and also the loneliness that is a topic of today. And importantly, he focused on the healthcare workers' mental health and well-being. They've also given a framework for enhancing the mental health of the healthcare workers recently, and it's been very helpful to work on some of those areas for ourselves at the Sadhguru Center. Dr. Murthy was the first Surgeon General who started the podcast series called House Calls with Dr. Vivek Murthy, where he invites the guests who come and also the participants to take part in some of these conversations as to how we can create a connected world that is meaningful for everyone. That's a very laudable cause, and thank you for doing that. On top of that, Dr. Murthy, who's actually the Vice Admiral of the US Health Commissioner Corps, he oversees over 6,000 public health servants who take care of people who are serving underserved communities and underprivileged communities. He previously served as the 19th Surgeon General for the United States under President Obama. He got his bachelor's from Harvard, where else? And he also got his medical school degree from Yale and his master's in in business administration from the Yale School of Business. We are very happy to have you, Dr. Vivek Murthy. And we have Sadhguru amongst us. Who else?
You're going to meet a man who has a devoted following across India and indeed around the world.
You're just an amazing person.
Great talking to you,
Thank you,
today. I look forward to our next time.
I've been following him for a while. He wrote a wonderful book called Inner Engineering.
Save soil, my friend.
I came across this man teaching online on YouTube, and he blew me away.
I really enjoyed this. You gave me a lot to think about.
I am so honored and so appreciative to have Sadhguru here.
Just learned a lot from this fine gentleman.
I like you, mate. I like the bit on it.
I'm so happy to be here with Sadhguru.
It's an honor to have you here today.
But I really love this man because he's a motorcycle driver. He's in the world, and yet here's this massive guru.
What do we need to do to kind of reset ourselves?
Well, it's in engineering. We needed a kickstart.
Mind-blowing.
We have engineered the outside world in so many ways, but we have done nothing about this one. If you want to know well-being, in is the only way out. For the very first time in the history of humanity, we have the necessary resources, capabilities and technologies to address every issue on the planet. I said, what will I do with $1 billion? My interest is 7 billion people. All of us come from the same soil. All of us eat of the same soil. All of us die and go back to the same soil. So soil is a unifying force. Soil is not our property. It's a legacy that's come to us from previous generations, and we must pass it on as living soil for future generations. Welcome to Mahashivratri. In these 20 and odd years, Mahashivratri has become a massive festival, the only one of its kind in the world right now. It is only by turning inward that we can create a world full of love, light and laughter. Let's make it happen.
I invite both the illustrious speakers to get on the stage and talk about the how, what, and why of loneliness.
How do we do this?
dukadham maranam karunam milanam maduram smaranam karunam kalavashadiha sakalam karunam samayadipate akilam karunam. Namaskaram, good morning to everyone. So
it is a true honor to be here with all of you, and especially with Sadhguru, whose contributions to the world are known by everyone who is here, but cannot be underscored enough. Can you all hear?
The volume, please. Is it on?
How is that? Is that better? Okay. Usually helps to turn it on. So I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be here, and what an honor to be here with Sadhguru, with all of you. I want to thank Bala in particular for inviting us and helping bring this event together. And we're here to talk about a subject that is near and dear to, I know, both of our hearts, which is the question of happiness, fulfillment, and how social connection fits into that. I'll start by sharing a few thoughts, and then we're just going to have a conversation, Sadhguru and I. But I began on this journey not because it was part of some big plan. As in, like many people, I grew up and had a loving family. I was very blessed in that regard, but I struggled at times as a shy and introverted kid with my own sense of loneliness and isolation. And when I became a doctor, I started to see that many of the patients I was caring for would come in with an infection, with another diagnosis, but in the background they would be struggling with this sense of loneliness and isolation. And it was that work combined with what I started to see when I was serving as Surgeon General, which was to see that all across our country, that people old and young and urban and rural areas were struggling with this kind of loneliness and isolation. That is what ultimately led me to look into the health impact of loneliness and to understand the science behind it. And I was surprised to learn two things. One is that this feeling of loneliness and isolation are very, very common. And that in the United States, certainly during the height of the pandemic, 50% of adults were struggling with loneliness. And if you look at young people in particular, they are struggling the most with the highest numbers. Well more than 50% report experiencing loneliness. The second thing that I realized was how consequential this was. That when people struggle with this sense of being disconnected from themselves as well as each other, that increases their risk of depression and anxiety, but also a physical illness. And we're talking a 29% increase in the risk of heart disease, 31% increase in the risk of stroke, 50% increase in the risk of dementia among older people, and a increased risk of premature mortality, premature death as well. And in fact, the mortality impact we see with social disconnection is comparable to what we see with smoking and with obesity. And it turns out, smoking and obesity we think of as classic health issues. Our connection with other people and with ourselves is also an important health issue. So that is what began us on this journey. And for me, just talking to people in different cultures around the world has underscored this idea that we need a sense of community in our lives. That we walk through life with goals and intentions and a sense of individual, perhaps, direction, but at some point or another, we all lean on each other. We need support from one another. I think a key part, finally, that gets lost sometimes with loneliness is the idea that to be deeply connected to other people, one also needs to be connected to oneself. And to be connected to oneself means to understand your worth and your value, your connection to the universe, to be able to have and preserve and develop and cultivate a sense of peace, also internally. But sometimes we need other people to help push us forward on this path. Sometimes people in our life can be like mirrors. They can help us see ourselves more clearly, the way good friends and good family do. So this effort to rebuild a sense of connection and community in our lives, in our world, in my view, could not be more essential today, because it's not only having an impact on our health, but we're finding that as we experience all the changes that are coming in the world and that have been coming for the last 20 years, particularly around technology, they have brought extraordinary benefits to our lives. They've also shifted how we relate to each other, right? And we may be surrounded by many people, we may be digitally connected, but that feeling of having somebody that you can lean on, somebody who knows you, somebody with whom you can have the experience of giving and receiving love and compassion and affection, that is something we all need, and many of us do not have. Rebuilding that, in my view, is one of the most important things we can do, not only for our individual health, but for the health of our families, of our communities, and for the world at large. So I'd love to get your take and your perspective on this subject.
Well, we are nearly 8.5 billion people, and we are lonely. So in a pretty crowded world, people are feeling lonely. Well, there is a societal or sociological aspect to it, which the doctor, what do I say, Doctor General?
You can call me Vivek. I'm informal.
Like he articulated, and also I have not read the book unfortunately, but I know generally what's the direction, about the sociological and societal dislocations that have happened, because situations need to be adjusted constantly. If we don't adjust them constantly enough, then slowly societies, international situations, family situations, everything will come to dislocation. This is the nature of living together with the world. You need to adjust that. It is that adjustment, I believe, the administration is trying to address, how to create infrastructure, situations and possibilities so that some alignment happens, the gaps at least reduced in the societal structure. But loneliness per se is not a social phenomenon, it is a psychological phenomenon. That sitting among a crowd of people, you can still feel lonely. Being with people who love you, little too much sometimes. Hello? You know, Gauche. So, even if you are loved and cared for, still you could feel lonely because it's a psychological phenomenon. You can make yourself lonely just about anywhere. So one important aspect, I'm trying to, say something about the society, but my main focus is on the individual. One thing that's happened in the society is the value of solitude is gone. What it means to be in solitude, most profound time of your life. This is the time you soak up life. So one thing was maintained in yogic cultures, how much time you spend in imbibing things or perceiving things, and how much time you spend in expression. This must be 1:3. If you are 2/3 of the time imbibing, 1/3 if you express, your expression will be profound and worthwhile for everybody. It will not be just noise in the world, it'll be of some value. But today, because of very early opportunities to express, even a 6-year-old child has something to say on the Facebook. I hope you guys ban that at least. Because when you're a child, it's to wonder, imbibe the world. That's a phenomenal creation. You must imbibe as much as you can before you find a word for it. But for everything we have a word and a whole lot of words are turning filthy. In this expression, there is no opportunity to perceive and imbibe life, simply flaky noise going on. So as human becomes more and more din, then being lonely is a natural consequence. This is just one aspect, there are many, many aspects to it. We'll see if we can cover as much as we can in this limited time, because this is not a simple issue, this is a massive issue. And it's one of the fastest growing problems on the planet. I'm not a pessimistic person, I'm not a doomsayer, hello? But I'm telling you, not as doomsaying. Sir, Dr. Amron, wonderful to have you here. I won't miss the biome, I'll tell them what the micro beings are doing to us. So, in this world, if we just let it be as is and just go on, technology is progressing and especially expressive technologies are going to multiply in ways that you have not imagined in the next 4 to 5 years' time with the AI and all these things. If this happens and we don't do anything about it, it's possible that in another 10 to 15 years' time, there'll not be a single family without at least one person who is mentally broken. Already we have achieved some landmarks. Slowly it is, there is almost no family over 40 years of age without some kind of prescription medication going on, physical stuff and whatever. But that will become common for mental things. Physical ailments are painful, but mental ailments are painful beyond imagination. Physical pain, you understand, and everybody has compassion for that. With mental pain, you don't know. You don't know whether they're acting up or they're really helpless. What is happening you can't figure because they flip from this to that and that to this. There is no one gauge for it. Nobody can clearly say this is it. This is the nature of psychological issues that I have seen so many people, it just beats you. If you try to hold them this way, they'll fall there, if you try to hold them there, they'll fall here, So this could become a massive problem. All the things, many things that we have achieved in the last 100 years as humanity, as human societies, it's wasted when we cannot… See, life is far more comfortable physically than ever before in the history of humanity. Particularly, I'm warning the women. You are the first generation who is enjoying the level of freedom and comfort and convenience that a woman has ever had in the history of humanity. Never before, hello? So, this we should not slip out of our hands and fall. That's where we are. If we don't do the right things now, if we don't take a massive action without indiscriminate action, without borders of nationality, race, religion, this, that, indiscriminate action for the human species to see that they stabilize their software. If we don't do this, all this development, all these conveniences, all the wonderful things that technology has heaped upon us, everything will go waste because we are not okay here. Already you're seeing it, hello? People are driving chariots, what no emperor could have. The greatest emperors had 12 horses on their chariots. But you're driving chariots with 600 horses, at least 250. But they're driving their dream car. How many of them are driving blissfully or joyfully or at least peacefully? You just stop the traffic for 2 minutes, they'll be freaking. After all, they're sitting in their dream car, why can't they sit there for some more time and enjoy it? They always wanted that car. If somebody forces you for you to stay in your dream car or your dream home, you must enjoy it. You saw the pandemic time, they forced you to stay in your dream home. What mess? So, there is a difference between masking our illness, avoiding our illness and being healthy. This is a distinction we must set clearly. This is for the individuals. Mass application is different. We can only create facility, we can facilitate a few things here, there, but individuals should set a clear standard for themselves how to be. Well, it's easier said than done because human beings are not committed to their well-being, unfortunately. They want well-being to come to them, they're not committed to creating it. Unless they commit to creating it, really loneliness or… when I say loneliness, I see it as an incubation period for mental illness. You're incubating trouble, it will come. How soon, how later, what is the volume of trouble you will get may vary from person to person because this depends on genetics, this depends on social support that you have, your own intelligence, whatever, many factors. But is it coming? It is coming for everybody because the moment you start feeling lonely, lonely means just this. See, loneliness is of time. When I say loneliness is of time, that is, you sit here, time doesn't roll for you. If you look at this is always rolling. Hello? Did it? Unless you have a defective watch. The time is always rolling. We don't have to spend it. If you sit here, it goes away. This is the beauty of life and this is also the terror of life because life is going away. As I sit here, whoa, 1 more minute gone of my life. Yes or no? Not watch ticking, life is going away. So it is of time. If time becomes burdensome on you, that it rolls too slow, already you become lonely, that is why it is so. Loneliness does not necessarily mean there are no people around you. That's not the point. It is not about people. People are a little bit of an antidote. Maybe you find some release, but release is just a mask or just a little bit of arrangement. Loneliness is essentially happening because there is nothing beyond your thought and emotional process. You have become just physiological and psychological process. There is nothing more profound happening within the human being. Even if thought became profound, then also you wouldn't become lonely. If your thought and emotion happened the way you want, would you keep yourself joyful or miserable? Joyful. If you keep yourself joyful, when you're joyful, have you seen time? 24 hours just flips like that. When you're miserable, do you see how slow time rolls? So loneliness is of time because life is of time. If you do not know how to ride the time, then the same cycles of time will crush you. Loneliness is that crush. If it crushes you further, then it becomes mental illness. And they're not two different things, they're progression.
Building on what you said, Sadhguru, this question about addressing loneliness, which as you said can happen when you're with 1,000 people or when you're alone, that this is a subjective feeling. It's about how deeply we feel connected to others. I've spent a lot of time traveling and speaking to different types of people, and I remember college students, university students telling me that even though they had thousands of people, other students with them on campus, they still felt alone. They didn't feel that anybody knew them, they didn't feel they could be themselves. They didn't feel comfortable with who they are, who they were. And I've certainly talked though also to people who only have 1 or 2 people around them, but they feel very content. They feel connected, they feel a sense of inner peace and fulfillment. one of the things I think that's important for us, and I think about this not just as a Surgeon General, but really as a father, myself of two small kids who are 6 and 8, is how do we reorient society to focus on that deeper fulfillment that we're talking about, that comes from that deep connection to ourselves and to others. One of the greatest antidotes I have found to loneliness can be the service that we render to others. When we serve others, when we do something for our community, for the planet, that helps us also find a sense of peace, recognize the value that we have. But what I worry about is when I speak to young people these days, they're clearly surrounded by forces which are pushing them to think about success in life in a very different way. Right? And when I go to universities, I always ask students, can you tell me how you define success? And they'll usually tell me some combination of the following: fame, fortune, or power. And if you have all three of those things, then, well, society deems you to be ultra successful. But we know many people who have all of these three elements and are not fulfilled. And there's nothing wrong with being famous or being powerful or being rich. One can pursue those paths. The challenge comes, though, when we are telling or conveying to the rising generation of young people that that is the path to fulfillment. And that if you have that, then you don't need anything else. And I think that that could not be further from the truth. And so I think there's a deep hunger for the kind of fulfillment that we're talking about that comes from feeling that deep sense of connection to oneself and to others. Yet we have to figure out how to wrangle the cultural forces and the technology in our lives so that it helps us and serves what our intention is, which is to find fulfillment, as opposed to enslaving us to pursue the kind of behaviors and practices and activities that may generate clicks and revenue, on a website, but they don't always necessarily bring us the kind of fulfillment that we need. I'll lastly just say this. There's this term that I've found many students have used when I've spoken to them, which sort of haunts me a bit, which is they often ask the question, how are we supposed to build connection with other people when it's no longer the culture for people to talk to each other anymore? And the first time I heard that, I thought I misheard it. So I asked a student to repeat the question to me. And he said, well, how are we supposed to build connection to each other when it's not the culture to talk to each other anymore? And what he was referring to was the fact that on so many university campuses, the dining halls are quiet. When I was in university, the dining hall was the loudest place on the campus because everybody was talking. They were coming back from classes, they were exchanging points of view, they were learning about each other. Yet today...
Indian dining hall.
Oh, didn't.
Hello. They don't have to worry about hot mic with me. Just I say the same things even if I'm in the bathroom, so don't worry about it. The Indian dining halls are always quiet because that's by understanding that when you're eating, you shouldn't be talking. When I first came to the United States, that's the first thing I noticed. We started doing programs in the summer camps where children come. Everywhere there are big boards saying, if choking happens, what you should do, emergency choking, first aid. I thought, why would anybody choke on the food? I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. Then I see they're talking so much and eating food which is such low water content food. For example, bread is very low water content food, and they're talking so much, choking is natural. So, I know if you enter a restaurant, people are talking more than they're eating, that's why you must serve them Indian food, then they'll just eat.
It's a fair and interesting point about digestion and eating and talking. But one can say that overall, I would say that on college campuses, the volume is just low everywhere. The first university we visited, I remember asking my team, did we come on the right date, or are the students on break? Because I can't hear anybody talking on campus while they're walking here and there. And that's exactly right. So the students told me a couple of interesting things. They said, not only is everybody on their devices all the time, earbuds in, looking at their phone, on their laptop, but that is pervasive. It's happening everywhere. When they're walking somewhere, when they're eating in the dining hall, when they're sitting in the, on the green. But they also interestingly said, and the reason they asked me this question about the culture not being to talk to each other anymore, is that they have said that it is now no longer comfortable just to go up to somebody and start a conversation, because it feels like you're intruding on them. You're breaking up a podcast they're listening to, a conversation that they're having, or something that they're watching. And as that happens again and again and again, it's one thing if it happens, to somebody in their 50s or 60s who has a different reference point. Maybe they grew up in a digital age, or they weren't digital natives. But when that is what you've known from the earliest of ages, then it's hard to just build the kind of skills, for having a conversation, for learning from each other, from comparing points of view. That just doesn't come naturally. That has to be cultivated and built. But finally, to pick up on something Sadhguru said, this comfort with being with our own thoughts, with reflecting, with having contemplative time in our life, I worry that comfort has evaporated. That in many of our lives, the promise of our phones, and especially smartphones originally, was that it would make us feel connected. And then there are more promises that came. The promise that we will never be bored. We can always look at something. But all of that white space in our life, the few minutes we had when we were waiting for the bus, the few minutes we had when we were waiting for a friend to come meet us for dinner.
A lot of people got married in the bus stations,
You meet people in these unusual places, right? But if all of that white space is taken up, because when we have a moment we're on our devices or we're occupied, that means not only are we not having those unplanned interactions, but it also means that those moments for reflection, for just simply sitting and breathing and gathering ourselves, that doesn't happen as often. So we're in a place where we have to build this proactively, not only into our lives, but we have to help shape our culture, especially for young people, in a way that prioritizes that kind of time, that kind of reflection, that also prioritizes that kind of connection with others.
It's wonderful, and I deeply appreciate that the administration is even thinking of personal loneliness of individual human beings. That's great. But as is, there is so much facility if people want to meet and mingle and be. As you said, they are trying to imbibe music on the street when they're walking, or a podcast, or maybe they missed the lecture and they're listening to it on the street, we don't know, or they're texting. I just walked for about 15 minutes, we came a little early, so we're just walking. 2, 3 young ladies, they're just texting and coming straight like this. You have to make way, otherwise you want to bang into them. So, of course, it's a very important text, so I just make way. But I'm saying everything else in the world is missed except the phone screen. You know the cosmos on the phone screen. What this essentially means is, you have heaps of information and no experience about anything. So it gives you a false sense of knowing everything without knowing a damn thing about anything. This will make you like if anything happens, you're like deer in the headlights. You see the bewildered look on people's faces because they're somewhere, suddenly something brought them down here. This is a dangerous way to cultivate a society. This is not a problem of technology, because technology facilitates. How we use it is individual choice. The cultivation of what we do in schools, in homes, this is important. Because People have children, but their lives are such, they're still struggling with basic things in their own lives. What they were struggling when 16 years of age, at 30, 40, with children, they're still struggling with the same things. They're still trying to date somebody, they're still trying to look out for themselves. When children come, by then you must be settled so that you're a… Because children don't listen to a damn thing that you say. They observe how you are, they will go one step ahead or many steps ahead. If you are not a good example, they will go many steps ahead of that. So it's very important that you create that atmosphere, because a child is not just… Once you become a human being, I'm saying, child is not just a reproduction activity. You're literally manufacturing the next generation of people. It's a very important responsibility. So it's something that everybody should look at, because I don't want to go into the detail, you know better than me about this, the American situation. Why I'm concerned about the American situation is, somehow United States of America has found leadership on everything. Maybe not intentionally, some aspects intentionally, many other things have just happened. That anything that America does, people are doing. Anything that Americans do, the rest of the world is doing. When it's like this, it's a privilege which needs to be executed responsibly. When the world wants to be like you, it's very important how you are. So within the family, it's like this. When little children are there, I think even the most irresponsible people try to fix themselves a little bit, at least hold a cigarette behind their back when they're talking to the children. I've seen such… I'm saying they're trying to be responsible in their own little way. I appreciate that. So at least instead of not blowing the smoke into their face, they're holding like this. I'm saying that sense of responsibility is because somebody is looking up to you. When somebody is looking up to you, naturally how you are becomes very important. So this is the parent's position. These one or two or whatever you have comes in, they're looking up to you. You must understand, you're like a divine being for them because you've grown up ahead of them, they're this much, you're this much, all this stuff. So this is very hard to fix because it's an individual level within the family structure, no government can enter there, it's a private space. So this space has become so destabilized and uncontrolled in a country like this, and it's spreading everywhere, at least in the urban centers all over the world, it's becoming like this. That I don't want to enter into any controversial issues about this, but generally, you may be an exception, but generally, when two genders come together, children come, all right? This is the natural process of things. There are maybe now there are many other ways of doing it, I don't want to get into that. But large number of us are born like this. Our parents came together, we are here. Now, how they came together on a daily basis, is it a war at home? Or is it love? Or is it something very wonderful and beautiful? This determines who we are when we're growing up. That is out of control. There are many reasons. We can't address all of them. One simple thing is early age alcohol consumption. Other graduations have happened now, further PhDs are there now, okay? I mean LSD, PhD, whatever are there. I will not enter that, just the alcohol, which is considered nothing. Without it, most people cannot live today and it's not even considered any problem. It's legal everywhere and everybody can drink. There is enough studies to show how if a mother drinks alcohol, just about 12 milligrams of alcohol 3 months before conception, how the cranial structure of the child will be affected. In the case of the father, it's even worse. So all the men were feeling, oh, it's only the woman who should drink. In the case of the father, it's even worse because if a man consumes alcohol, the impact it has in the sperm quality and what it does to the cranial structure of the yet to be born or yet to be conceived child. You must understand, these are very powerful people, that they are not born, but they determine so many things in our lives. So their life we are contaminating in so many ways by doing this, especially those who start drinking below 18 years of age. Psychological problems, if they have not gotten into it, it's a miracle, the strength of their system somehow held on. They may not be really mentally ill in terms of medical terms, but if something happens in the traffic, if you have to yell at somebody, you're mentally ill in my opinion. Hello? All of us are driving something, somebody made a mistake, somebody made a wrong turn. If you have to yell obscenities, then you're mentally ill. But that's being normalized. One of the biggest dangers for this society is, both in the normal society and in the medical fraternity, we are making illness normal. Normalization of illness, this is very dangerous. Oh, how can we set such a standard nobody can reach? It's not about a standard. It is just that normal means you're untroubled, either in body or mind. Hello? Yes? If I sit here, I have no troubles in my body or in my mind. This is health at a rudimentary level. We can raise it to other levels, let's not go there. Just a rudimentary level, you're sitting here, your body is comfortable, your mind is comfortable. We can say you're healthy. Now when we make it normal that you have this problem, it's okay because everybody has it. This is dangerous because once you set such a standard, they will push the boundary, they'll push the boundary, they'll push the boundary. Then that guy was completely stoned out and like this in a zombie in many of these cities sitting there, he thinks he's normal. He thinks there's something wrong with you, you're going to work like a slave every day. Yes. And all this, there are many routes, I don't… because if I say something randomly here and there, it looks like I have some extreme viewpoints. No, I want you to understand, one big mistake we have done as modern societies is to talk about freedom. Freedom is an experience, a very profound, fantastic and most valuable human experience is freedom. But when we make it a social jingo, we are free, I'm free, you're free, now irresponsible behavior will come out of that. If you live responsibly, you will be free within yourself. If you aspire for freedom, you will become more and more irresponsible because doing freaky things looks like freedom. We come from… you're a young man, but we come from 60s where freedom, you know, too much freedom people did, and you know where it ended up? Because freedom is a consequence of living in a certain way. Freedom is not something that you do. You cannot do the consequence, you cannot do the fruit. You can only nurture the plant. Fruit has to happen. You must have the patience to wait. You must have the commitment to nurture. Otherwise, the fruit will not come. But right now, we are plucking the fruit out of a tree that is non-existent. Freedom without responsibility will naturally lead to freakier and freakier expressions of human mind. And in this, see, when you say somebody is a freak, essentially it means they're alone. Yes or no? We say somebody… can I point at you, Bala? If we say he's a freak, what we are saying is he doesn't belong to this, he's alone. If he became alone because he's in profound enjoyment of his solitude or his aloneness, fantastic. It's the best thing that a human being can do. But he's alone because of his irresponsible behavior or trying to do something just to stand out among people, now he will become lonely inevitably. When a whole society tries that, then loneliness becomes a massive issue. And loneliness, as I said earlier, is an incubation period for more complex problems which will naturally evolve. It's very, very important that already it's manifesting in many different ways, but at least now, before it's too late, we're looking at loneliness, you're writing about loneliness, addressing loneliness, because if we don't address it at the right moment, with the right amount of input into it, well, you'll have a world full of sick people. And many of you, or at least a few of you may know this, you don't have to be mentally ill. There's somebody around you. It is the most painful experience. If one person is mentally ill, at least 10 people will suffer immensely around them, because that's the nature. If one person is physically ill, he will suffer, but others can tend to it, and physical illness brings lot of love, compassion, connection, everything. Mental illness is not like that. It's a dangerous direction to move in, because if one person suffers mental illness, he ensures that everybody suffers, not by intent, but that is the nature of that problem. So, addressing these things at an early age becomes important, whether this irresponsible use of technology, you cannot stop technology and it should not be stopped, it has to go where it goes. We are into lot of transformational technology, but real work to transform human beings has not started yet. This is our problem. What we use, the material or the machines that we use are going through the ceiling. We are still in the same caveman's position. If I just touch you, brrr, you'll growl like a caveman, even today. So I'm saying caveman handling all this advanced technology is not only dangerous to him, it's dangerous to the very existence of the planet. Because today we have enough technology, enough destructive power. When I say destructive power, don't think just nuclear bomb, something, yes, that is definitely there. But there are so many ways to freak life for everybody around you today, and it's in the hands of just about everybody. It's just another few years where even little kids will figure out how to do this just for fun. You understand? They can freak your life, they can close down this, they can do that, everything on their phone they can do because it's going there. And technology is running at such a pace, it's time that you upgrade your technology, that this must be upgraded. If this is not upgraded, then whenever we upgrade our activity without upgrading this one, then we will suffer. Right now, people are saying stress, anxiety, this, that. Well, they got a job that they wanted, and why are they stressing? They are not given a job that they don't want, they educated themselves for that, they applied for it and they got the job. Now they're stressful. It was like that some time ago. Now in the school itself they're stressful. Nothing, your parents are paying the fees, they're feeding you, they're dropping you, they're picking you up, but you're stressed. What is this about? We must understand, we just do not know how to manage human intelligence. When our intelligence turns against us, you can call it stress, you can call it anxiety, you can give it 1,000 names, it doesn't matter. Essentially, there is no system in the society to teach people how you should hold your intelligence, because it's a sharp instrument. If you were an earthworm, you could hold it anyway. Some people believe earthworm has brains at both ends. Not true, but lot of people believe like this. So, that level of brain if you had, no problem, whichever way you use it. Once you have this level of intelligence, how you hold it, how you employ it is important because it's a sharp instrument. Once you have a sharp instrument, how you conduct it, how consciously you apply it is very important. Essentially, it is compulsive behavior. Compulsive behavior means compulsiveness is essentially absence of consciousness. There is not enough consciousness to use what we have. whether the technology at hand or the greatest technology which is here, in a way that works for me and for everybody around me. If my own intelligence turns against me, no force in the universe can save me, yes or no? Hello? If your intelligence turns against you, you're finished. This is what mental illness means. But when we say stress is normal, you must understand you're working for creating a mentally ill world. You're working for creating a humanity which is mentally ill. Stress is not normal. When you were 5 years of age, joy was normal, isn't it so? Hello? When did stress not become normal? Because you met all the wrong people, or you are that wrong person. When did it become normal? People ask me, Sadhguru, how do you unwind, Sadhguru? What do you do in your life? I said, I don't wind myself up. So there is a massive perceptional dislocation about everything because only information, no living experience. It is not just in terms of human connection, definitely that is there, but in every way. Can I tell a joke? They're all getting serious now. Shankaran Pillai applied for a job in Bengaluru. They all come from around that region, me also. So they were interviewing him and this was the job required a certain level of perception. So they asked him a question, which is further, Mumbai or moon? Without batting an eyelid, Shankaran Pillai said, Mumbai. Yes, how's that? He said, I can see the moon, I can't see Mumbai. So the perceptional dislocation is heavy right now in the world because nobody has spent time with anything. A tree, an insect, a worm, a snake, a bird, soil, what's happening around them? There is no anything, everything. They've seen the whole cosmos on the phone screen. This is dangerous. This is dislocation. You cannot exist here dislocated from the rest of the existence. Are you breathing, everybody, or? This is your connection, just break it and see. Dislocation means gone. So you know respiration is a transaction. Without the transaction, you can't exist. Like this, there are 1,000,000 forms of transaction happening. The more you are consciously engaging in those transactions, not necessarily talking to human beings, the more stable you will be in body and mind. And they're not two different things.
Picking up on this important thread that Sadhguru has started here around how we approach the world in a way that can ultimately contribute to our fulfillment. How do we re-engineer, if you will, our sense of grounding and perception? Right now what it feels is happening is there's so many changes and new technologies and new tools in the world, and they're extraordinary, but they are reshaping us in ways that we perhaps did not intend. And that does not mean that we should get rid of all those technologies, no. What it means is just we should get clear on who we are, what we want, and how we want to utilize those technologies in our life. When I think about my own experience in medicine, being trained and then later practicing medicine, actually just a few blocks away from here at Brigham and Women's Hospital, I remember there were many things that we knew impacted health and well-being. Many of them we could measure, and we would look at lab reports and we'd listen to patients' hearts and to their lungs. But what I started to realize over time is that there were things that we were not necessarily formally taught about in our classes, but that was having a profound impact on someone's overall well-being and health. And one of those was their sense of community, their sense of connection to other people, their sense of purpose in life, their engagement in service in the world around them. You see, we would realize that people could, at the end of a hospital stay, have the perfect lab values, the exact right potassium and sodium levels. They could have gone through a procedure that removed an inflamed appendix. They could go through all of these things, and we would look at the imaging in the labs and say, they're better. Yet a lot of times, they weren't feeling better. They were feeling stressed and burdened and unhappy still. And so I think if we really want to think about healing in a holistic way, in a fulsome way, if we ultimately want to help contribute to people's fulfillment in lives, we have to recognize that it's a combination not only of what we can see on scans and what's happening in our physical body, but also what's happening in our hearts and in our minds. And when we can understand and optimize those different elements, the body, the mind, and the spirit and heart, that's when we can drive toward fulfillment. There are a few simple things that I often try to remember myself and sometimes suggest to other people, simple things that we can build into our day to help experience more of that connection to self and connection to others. Because I realize, people are living busy lives, and sometimes it might feel hard to just all of a sudden quit your entire job, leave everything behind, and move somewhere else and start a new life, although some people do that, and that might be the right thing for them. But a few simple things I usually suggest people start with is just to, number one, just find even just a few minutes each day where you could sit and just breathe, where you can observe what's around you. Maybe that's sitting in nature on your doorstep and just taking a few deep breaths before the day begins. Maybe it's at the end of the day, sitting after everyone else has gone to bed and just breathing and just being. We are in a world that's so focused on doing that we often don't focus on who we're being. But being is what precedes doing. And when we come from a good place of being centered and at peace, we can often do far more. If you want to think about it in productivity tools, terms, if you will, being centered is one of the biggest force multipliers that we can have in our lives. But in addition to those few minutes, if you could just take 5 minutes a day to reach out to somebody you care about, maybe it's calling a relative or a friend just to check on them and see how they're doing. If you can do one kind thing for someone each day, one act of compassion, it could be something very simple. You see somebody who is walking down the hall and their papers fell down, and you just stop for a moment to help them pick that up. Or you see somebody who might be feeling sad or down during a meeting, and you pause for a moment after the meeting is over to say, hey, I noticed that you seem quiet. Is everything okay? And finally, if you can, while you're doing these things, whether it's those moments of peace on your own, whether it's that 5 minutes of connection with somebody, this small act of compassion, if you can be present while you do that, if you can put away your devices and just focus on the moment, on the person you may be helping, these cumulatively may take you no more than 10 minutes a day to do, but they can help establish a basis for peace and connection that we all desperately need in our lives. I think one of the great myths in the world we live in is that massive change takes a lot of time. And it doesn't always have to. Sometimes it can, but sometimes just a few minutes each day of investing in that connection to ourselves and others can do a world of difference in changing how we feel. And I feel this even more strongly as a parent, as I look at my own kids growing up and at the world that they are now surrounded by. And look, I know that as a father, there's no way I can be there all the time, right? To protect them and ensure I know exactly what they're exposed to. They're growing up, they're going to encounter all kinds of things that I can't even understand in the future. But what we can do as parents, as grandparents, as people who, even if we don't have our own children or grandchildren, have other kids in our lives that we care about, nieces and nephews and friends' kids, what we can do just as human beings who care about the next generation is we can make sure that we are supporting them in carving out the spaces for that time in solitude, for that we're also emphasizing to them that service to others is valuable, that we're also leading by example and sharing with them that reaching out to somebody just to connect each day, not for an agenda, not for any secondary gain, but just to be present with someone else in their life in a real human way, that has value. That's something that my parents taught me very early on. My mother is actually here with us today. And my mother and father, when I was growing up, we were very blessed to be able to come to the United States, to make this our home, to find wonderful neighbors and friends who helped us. But we went through a lot of hardship as well along the way. And our friends did too. And what my parents often taught me was that when people are going through something in their life, it's important for us to show up for them. My father always used to say, if somebody loses their loved one today, it makes a difference if you call tomorrow or in a year. Call tomorrow. Timing matters. And they would often, when something happened, they would go and see somebody immediately just to be with them, to drop off food, to help their family. When a patient of theirs, and they ran a medical clinic in Miami, when their patient of theirs was struggling with something difficult, whether it was night, day, whenever it was, they'd pick up the phone and talk to them for a few minutes just to make sure they had a pathway to healing. And I'll always remember that when I was 7 years old, my mother woke me up in the middle of the night and told me, hurry up, we have to get in the car, we got to leave right now. And it was like 2 a.m, and I didn't know what was happening. But I got into the car and my sister was there sitting in the back seat as well, also sleepy, bleary-eyed. And as my father and mother drove the car, they explained to us that their patient, Gordon, had just died after a long struggle with metastatic cancer. And we were driving to the trailer park where his now widow, Ruth, lived. And they knew that they couldn't bring Gordon back, but they knew that in that moment they needed to show up for another human being, a friend of theirs who was suffering. And I'll always remember, as long as I live, the image of my mother in her Indian sari walking up the stairs of Ruth's trailer, lit by the moonlight, and seeing the door open, and Ruth coming out with tears flowing down her face, and seeing the two of them embrace. They came from two incredibly different worlds, two very different life experiences. Yet in that moment, they were two human beings there for each other, exchanging the most powerful force that human beings have to give, which is the love that we give and receive from one another. And I want kids growing up today, my kids, your kids, all the children in the world, to know that that force is intrinsic within them, that we're born with that. We don't need to be something, accomplish something by world standards, hit a certain level of net worth in order to be worthy as human beings. We don't need to make our children feel that if they aren't an influencer on social media, that they have somehow failed in the world. What we want our kids to know is that they are born with the most important thing that they need, which is that spark of the divine, which is that ability to give and to receive love. And they can build on that to contribute to the world, to help others, to deepen the sense of peace and fulfillment they have. But our children should know that they are enough. So this teaching, building this foundation for society requires us to recenter on what's really important to us, what really drives fulfillment. And as much as I worry about the deep pain that we're living through in terms of people's struggle with loneliness and with mental illness, as much as I worry about the massive changes that are coming with artificial intelligence and others, and with the struggle of how to make sure that works for us and not against us, what I do know is that we have an opportunity right now, perhaps because of those challenges, to rethink how we live our lives, how we define success, what's important to us. And that's a decision, that's a change, that's a shift that we can each start making in our lives today. Because when a few people start choosing to live differently, when they start choosing to value success and define success differently, then more people start looking at them and saying, there's a different way to be. And that grows, that movement builds, and that's ultimately how the world will be transformed.
Among all the creatures that thrive on this planet, we are the only creatures who are referred to as beings. We don't call either animals bigger than us or smaller than us as beings. Because they're all structured in such a way by nature that they're largely instinctual in their activity and reactions and responses to life. Or to be fair to them, maybe it's not like an exact percentage, but something like for most creatures, 90% of who they are is determined by nature. 10% latitude they have to build their own personalities. But with human beings, only 10% is by nature, 90% latitude is there. This is why you see this mess. This 90%, how to structure, what is the best way to build this 90% so that it works for this one and for everything around? This has not been looked at profoundly enough. The entire yogic system is about this. The yogic sciences are not unfortunately, in United States, yoga means twisting and turning. It is not about twisting and turning, there is a whole science. As there is a science and technology for external well-being, there is a whole science and technology for inner well-being. Essentially, science means we understand what's around us better, we perceive them not just by sight, little more, so that we know what to do. We've done a lot with the world. If you do any more, there'll be no world left to that extent. But nothing with this one. Fundamentals of our existence is neither understood nor experienced, because whole life is structured in such a way, it's about doing, it's about dominance. It is not about being. Because people think being means no doing, being means you will be useless for everything else. No. Only if a plant is rooted in the soil properly, will the flower and fruit come out of it. One who has his roots hanging up there is not going to produce anything. So, this culture of wanting to go somewhere, always, has to be reversed. If you sit here, you have no need to go anywhere, but if it's needed, you will go wherever. Tamron is here, and the significance of biome in our gut and their cousins in our brain, and they're messing us a lot because they're not happy with us, because the food that we're eating is not good for them. If whatever is not good for them is not good for us. So, if we don't take care of the microbial activity in the body, in the soil, in the atmosphere around us, which we have been killing, genocidal level of killing. You have seen the old images of airplanes spraying insecticides and going all over the place. This is death of the planet. Planet will not die just like that, and planet will not die. It's death of life on the planet, and you must understand, though we are in the most dominant position on the planet compared to other creatures, we are one of the most fragile creatures on the planet. Hello? Yes or no? So whatever big disturbances happen, we are the first ones to go. Others will just burrow inside and keep quiet for some time, and they will come back. This one is the most fragile thing, though it has a horribly enlarged sense of self-significance. Where even we have formed religions where people are telling us, God made every other life to serve us. Go and ask an ant if it wants to serve you. Stand on an anthill and ask, you guys are here to serve me? They will teach you another kind of lesson. Every life has its own full-fledged life going. This is because most human beings have not spent any time with life around. If you watch, Whether an ant or an insect or a bird or a tree, every one of them have full-fledged lives, their own relationships, their own families, their own everything. They may even have a Surgeon General, we don't know. I don't know. But definitely they have a leader. They may not call him a president or prime minister, but they have a leader of their own. And they're organized and they're living in an organized way, in a sensible manner. Very rarely it ever happened, unless it came from outside, that they caused harm to themselves in any big way. It never happened. So, those creatures who are far lesser intelligence, if they can be in such a way, they know what is needed for their life, what is not. With so much intelligence, we must know. So, this is the biggest problem right now, human intelligence. What do you think? First of all, let me clear this. Is intelligence a solution or a problem? She's saying it's a problem. Huh? Yes, still something hits you in the face. This happened. Shankaran Pillai fell off the second floor. And he screamed in pain. People gathered. They asked, "Did the fall hurt you?" He said, "You idiots, it's not the fall, it's the stopping." You must do skydiving without parachute. If you jump from 13,000 feet, it's the most wonderful thing to do, going. You don't even know whether you're going up or down, simply you're there. Only if you look down, the damn planet is coming at you. Don't look down, you don't know what's coming. Well, it'll come. So, these philosophies and these things that are said, human is a social animal, we're trying to structure around that, no. Ignorance is bliss, no. Ignorance is far more damaging than evil. Far more evil than evil, yes or no? Evil people take a break. Ignorance doesn't take a break, it's on. So don't get into this mode, ignorance is bliss. If you jump off from somewhere, till you hit the ground, it's blissful. It is very blissful, I'm telling you. So this is so with everything. So the most important thing is that human beings take charge of their body and their intelligence, first thing. Our school system should come up with this. It's not just about learning ABC. Today the computer will do the ABC typing. You don't have to type it. See, my father's generation, they spent so much time on the copybook to get their handwriting right. We refused. We just scribbled whichever way we wanted. And my father would look at this and say, "Oh, is this… it's a cockroach crawl." But today, in another few years, nobody will know how to write. Hello? Who's going to use paper and pencil or pen? Nobody's going to write anything, everything is this, or maybe if you just speak, it'll do its own thing. So, we're moving very fast outside, archaic inside. This is the dislocation you're seeing. You cannot slow down the outside, you cannot control the technology, you cannot control human aspirations on the world. Only way is you engage in a more meaningful way than the way we are doing right now. The way we are doing right now is wonderful for many of us, but a whole lot of them are beginning to suffer. Technology is very wonderful for me. These days I'm speaking in 24 languages, you know. If you have to learn one language to speak well, probably it would take 10 to 12 years of life to just pick up one new language and really get to a place where you can articulate well. But now I'm speaking in 24 languages without even knowing a word about the damn language, all right? These are not small things, these are fantastic things. But will they be fantastic in your experience or will it become great misery? Depends on who holds the technology. So there is no way to stop the technology. Policy making, will never move at the pace of technology, just know this. It's all empty talk. It cannot. In the very nature of things in a democratic society, policy making cannot move at the pace of technology, it'll never happen. Only after it's happened, it will try to fix it. Because that is the nature of technology. What tomorrow they'll come up with, you don't know today. It is not like other technologies we have seen, okay, we got a steam engine, what is the next thing? It'll happen in the next 25 years. No. In the next 25 days, something may happen that we have not imagined possible. So when this is the pace at which it is moving, it's extremely important that we need to invest in human transformation. As a part of this, we are launching what is called as miracle of mind. This mind, human mind is the greatest miracle on the planet. Do you agree with me? Yes. No, you're looking for other kinds of miracles. This is the greatest miracle, because whatever the greatest technologies that you're seeing, all are a drop out of this one, isn't it? Hello? Yes. You are very fascinated with your phone. It's a tiny drop of this one, yes or no? So, human mind is a miracle, but most human beings are using it as misery manufacturing machine. It is going into industrial scale, that's why the book and that's why the talk. Because individual suffering has always been there on the planet, but now suffering is being on an industrial scale, that it may be mass production very shortly So, time to address it has come, but whatever governments, administrations, organizations address this on various levels, which is all meaningful and important, but there is no substitute for individual people taking their physical and mental health as their personal responsibility, not for a government to fix, not for a doctor to fix, not for anybody to fix, for me to ensure that I'm physically, mentally healthy, because the privilege of being human will be lost otherwise. Namaskar.
I know that we wanted to have a Q&A session, so we have about 7 minutes. So I have a question for Dr. Vivek Murthy himself, because this is a good segue for Miracle of Mind. You talk about pain, loneliness, and addiction. Can you explain the neuroscience behind it, or help us understand why somebody in loneliness actually will go to opioid addiction?
Well, one thing we know about pain is that there are many types of pain. We typically tend to think of physical pain, but emotional pain is powerful as well. And we know that when we look at the anatomy and the location of pain fibers in the brain, that the pain actually registers in a very similar location in our brain, such that we can actually feel emotional pain the way we do physical pain. That old saying that, it was a punch in the gut when I got this bad news, that actually has some actual biological basis to it, which again is that emotional pain can sometimes feel just as intense as physical pain. And what we know about medications like opioid medications is they not only affect us on a physical level, but on a psychological level as well, that they can blunt, in some ways, both physical and emotional pain for some people. And so when I think about that, I think about this broader opioid epidemic that we're living through right now. And I'm incredibly grateful that in the most recent data, we finally have seen for the first time a decline in overdose deaths, thanks to the great work of many public health leaders here in the state and around the country. Give them a round of applause. And that has to do with a lot of things: expansion of treatment, availability of naloxone, working harder to keep fentanyl out of the country. There are a lot of important reasons why that has, those deaths are going down. But we still have a large number, of overdose-related deaths. And one of the things I think that we have to think of, in addition to treatment, in addition to source control, is asking about, are there things that are happening within an individual that we can also look at that may be affecting their experience of pain, particularly emotional pain, right? this is where loneliness comes in too. You know, it is one of several sources of emotional pain that people experience. But the contrast is that when we think about social connection is extraordinarily powerful in terms of not just in practical ways, but how it makes us feel. And just think about this for a moment. When something good happens to you, how many of you have reached out to somebody to share? Right? When something bad happens to you, how many people have reached out to somebody to talk to them or just to be with them? Many have, right? This is something we naturally do as human beings, is we want to celebrate with others, we want to commiserate with others. If you follow sports and when your sports team wins, people run out into the streets to celebrate together, right? We do this because there is something inherent and powerful about connecting with people from a place of joy and compassion and love. And this is one of the reasons why service is really powerful, is it's a pathway to doing that, to connecting with others from a place of compassion. So this is why the more we learn about social connection, from the epidemiology of it, to the biology of it, to the personal experiences that so many of us have with connection and loneliness, we realize that this is actually an important tool in our broader toolbox of what we can use to address health challenges and to address unhappiness. And I think that over time, if we want to progress in medicine and in health and in well-being, we have to keep building that toolbox, which means we have to expand how we think about health. We have to go from the perhaps way we thought about health several decades ago, which is that health is just physical health, to recognizing that the health of not only our bodies, but also our minds and how we feed and support our spirits, that these are all important pieces that we have to think about if we ultimately want to help heal the pain that so many are experiencing and support the kind of fulfillment that everyone craves.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. I will request all of you to stay seated. We are at the end of the conversation. I thank Dr. Murthy for his insight and also Sadhguru for his insight on this lovely topic and conversation. And thank you so much for this day. Please stay seated. So please stay seated. There's going to be a photo shoot. We're just organizing it so people can